Slap.
The sharp crack echoed through the glass-walled office like a gunshot. Jason Hale staggered back a step, one hand instinctively rising to his cheek, eyes wide, not from the pain, but the shock. He hadn't seen it coming. He never did. Lena Whitmore stood in front of him, calm as ever, eyes glinting with a fire he hadn't seen in years. Her hand lowered slowly, not trembling. No regret, no apology, just precision. She leaned in slightly, her voice low and cruelly composed. And now you're standing in a building I own, in a firm I lead, wearing desperation like a designer coat you can't afford. She straightened the sleeve of her cream blazer like he was nothing more than dust on her fabric. Jason blinked, still stunned, still processing. This wasn't the Lena he remembered. The girl who used to bring him hot coffee and cold sandwiches after his failed auditions. The girl who stayed up editing his demo tracks and held his hand in waiting rooms. The girl who looked at him like he hung the stars. No, this woman, this Lena wore confidence like armor and silence like a sword. He forced a weak chuckle, trying to fill the silence. Is this what you've become? She tilted her head.
No, Jason.
This is what I always was. You just never looked long enough to see it.
A pause.
A beat too long. Then she stepped back, looked him up and down like he was an old stain on a designer rug, and asked, "How does it feel?" He swallowed. Lena's lips curved, faint and deadly. To be the one begging? And with that, she turned and walked out of her own office, leaving Jason standing in the wreckage of everything he once threw away. 3 years earlier. The apartment always smelled like burned toast and cheap cologne. The windows barely opened. The radiator clicked like it was choking every night. The bed was actually a futon that hadn't been folded properly in 6 months. And the ceiling dripped in the corner every time it rained. But Lena didn't mind, because Jason was there. And back then, Jason Hale made everything feel like it meant something. He wasn't famous yet. He wasn't even noticed. But he had a voice that could still a room, rough and honeyed. The kind of voice that wasn't perfect but felt like it understood you. He sang on sidewalks, in tiny bars, once in the middle of a farmer's market where no one stopped to listen but Lena. And every time he finished a song, he'd glance around like he didn't care, but he did. Lena always clapped, even when it was just the two of them, especially then. They'd met during their second year of university. Jason was busking outside the library, strumming a cover of something familiar but broken, making it his own. Lena paused, coffee in one hand, backpack slipping off her shoulder. She didn't smile. She just watched. Quietly. Jason caught her eye mid-chorus. "You look like you've got something to say," he said between chords. She raised an eyebrow. "Only that your G chord's sharp." He blinked. She tossed him a $5 bill. "Use it for new strings." Jason stared after her like she was a riddle. 3 days later, he found her again. In the campus cafe. "Play you something in perfect tune?" Lena rolled her eyes, but stayed. That was how it started. Lena didn't fall for Jason because he was charming. She fell for him because he was hungry. Not for her, but for something more. Something bigger than either of them. He wanted to be known. And she understood that. She understood ambition so well it hurt. She had it too. She just didn't show it in songs. They built a rhythm. She worked part-time at a legal aid clinic and studied until midnight. He played open mics and taught guitar to middle schoolers who barely paid attention. They shared everything. Pizza slices, small victories, even toothbrushes when hers got lost in the chaos of his life. She paid for groceries. He sang her to sleep. She edited his audition tapes. He kissed her forehead before every shift. He always said, "When I make it, you'll be the first person I thank." Lena would smile, brushing hair out of his eyes. "Just don't forget me when they all start screaming your name." He'd grip her waist tighter. "I only ever want you to scream it." It was stupid.
Passionate. Young.
And it felt like forever. But forever, she'd learn, is a promise made easiest in poverty. When nothing's shiny, when no one's watching, when it's easy to believe in each other because there's no other choice. The cracks came slowly. When he started caring about Instagram more than lyrics. When he canceled a date because his look needed to be curated. When he asked her, softly at first, not to tag him in anything romantic. "It's not good for branding," he said. She said nothing, just nodded. She told herself it was temporary. Growing pains. She didn't know then he was growing out of her. But that came later. For now, they were still two people sharing a dream he thought belonged to him alone. And Lena, she still believed she was building something with him. She didn't realize she was just laying the foundation for someone else to walk over. Fame didn't arrive all at once. It tiptoed into Jason's life. First, it was a reel that went viral, a grainy video of him singing in a parking lot, a raw high note that struck something in people. Then came the interviews, the up-and-coming features, the blog articles calling him the next sound of soul. He started getting recognized on the street. Just once or twice at first. Then more. A record label called. Then a manager. Then an agent who wanted to develop the brand. And just like that, Jason Hale stopped being Lena's boyfriend and became Jason Hale. He moved into a larger place.
Sleek. Cold.
White walls. Minimalist decor that looked like it belonged in a showroom. She still visited, but there was no warmth. No crooked toaster or burned soup or tangled blankets anymore. Instead, there were schedules, stylists, publicists, and Lena, always waiting, always patient. Still the same girl who brought him up from nothing, now reduced to standing just outside the camera frame, holding her breath while they decided which angles made him look more authentic. He stopped writing music around her, stopped asking for her opinion, started showing up late, leaving early, canceling plans last minute. "It's the industry, babe," he said. "It's chaos right now." She said she understood, but she didn't, because chaos was familiar. He'd once built dreams with her in chaos. This was indifference. There were parties she wasn't invited to, events where he asked her to arrive separately. He told her to tone it down when she got emotional, said she didn't get how fragile everything was.
And she kept taking it.
Because somewhere in that polished, manufactured version of him, she still thought the old Jason lived. The one who had once written a song for her birthday. The one who'd cried when her scholarship came through. The one who used to say her voice was the only one he'd never tune out. But that voice? He'd long stopped listening. He never asked why she never spoke about her parents. Never wondered why she worked so many jobs while studying. He assumed she had nowhere else to go. That she was tethered to him because she had no choice. That her silence meant smallness. He didn't realize her silence was sacred. Then came the night everything collapsed. It was supposed to be a quiet dinner. She brought takeout from his favorite Thai place. Picked up the wine he used to love. Wore the dress he said made her look like a poem. The doorman hesitated when she asked to be let up. Jason hadn't said he was expecting anyone. Her stomach dropped. But she forced a smile. He forgot.
He's busy.
She still had that kind of faith in him. She used her spare key, quietly turned the lock. The apartment was dim, lit only by soft orange ambient lights. Music was playing. Soft laughter. Female. She froze. Then walked in. There on the white leather sofa, Jason, shirtless, and curled beside him, her long legs tangled in his, wearing Lena's hoodie, Ariel Black, the indie pop sensation, his newest co-collaborator, his creative soulmate, famous, beautiful, and definitely not Lena. They both turned as she entered. Jason sat up, startled, scrambling for words. Lena, wait, it's not. She didn't wait. She didn't yell. She just looked at him. For a long, brutal second. Then she looked at Ariel. The girl smirked, like this was entertainment. Lena's voice was ice. You can keep the hoodie. She left without slamming the door, because slamming would mean she cared enough to make noise. She didn't cry until she got home. And even then, it wasn't heartbreak. It was humiliation. 3 years. She had sacrificed, built, believed, only to be replaced by glitter and exposure. The next morning he texted, Jason, last night was a misunderstanding. This happens all the time in the industry. I didn't sleep with her. We were just writing. Jason, you know you're the only one who matters. Jason, don't be dramatic. Jason, you'll come back. You always do. Then finally, Jason, you need me more than I need you. You have nothing without me. She stared at the screen for a long time, then slowly deleted the thread. Without replying, without tears. She didn't have nothing. She had herself. And that was about to be everything. Lena disappeared like she never existed. No messy breakup posts. No online rants. No screaming matches outside hotels or cryptic tweets. She simply vanished. Unfollowed him. Blocked his number. Deleted every picture. She moved into a studio apartment no bigger than a closet, on the edge of the city, where sirens and streetlights replaced his guitar and morning kisses. She worked at the library on weekends, picked up extra shifts at a courthouse archive. Her days blurred into studying, surviving, and silence. No more check-ins. No one asking if she ate. No one waiting at the end of the day. Just her. And yet, there was peace in the quiet. Not right away, but slowly, like bruises fading, like breath coming back after drowning. She poured herself into her degree. Late nights became her religion. Case law, constitutional theory, mock trials. The rhythm of her new life was steady. No highs, no spotlight, just forward. Her professors noticed her grit. Her classmates couldn't keep up. She won debates, earned top marks, was offered an internship at Wells and Reese, one of the city's most respected firms.
She didn't post about it.
She didn't tell anyone, because Lena wasn't chasing attention anymore. She was building something real. But Jason didn't vanish. Of course, he didn't. It started with an accidental encounter at a gallery opening. She was there with classmates. He was performing an acoustic set for a luxury sponsor. He saw her the moment he walked in. She was wearing black, sleek, understated, stunning. He paused mid-greeting, walked over, smiled like nothing had ever cracked between them. Didn't expect to see you here, he said. She sipped her drink, uninterested. I don't live under a rock. He laughed. Still got that bite. And then, eyes darting toward the people near them, He leaned in just enough to be heard. Hope you're doing well. If you ever need a recommendation or help getting into the industry world. He trailed off.
Smug.
She blinked once. I work in law. He smirked.
Right.
Of course. Still trying to save the world. No, she said, voice cool. Just trying not to become the kind of man who thinks fame makes him a god. He stiffened, barely. She smiled. Enjoy the crowd, Jason. And walked away before he could say another word. But it happened again. At a club opening. He walked in with Ariel clinging to his arm, her laugh too loud, too rehearsed. He spotted Lena again. Alone, standing near a bar, waiting for her friend. He whispered something to Ariel, then strolled over. You always did like to show up in my world, huh? She turned to him, arching a brow. You really think this is your world? He chuckled, looking around like he owned the room. Feels like it. Lena scanned him from head to toe. His designer jacket, silver chains, sunglasses indoors. Feels like a costume, she said. This time, he had no comeback. But perhaps the worst was the interview.
She didn't mean to see it.
It was playing on a TV in a bakery, an entertainment segment featuring Jason talking about his early struggles. Yeah, there was someone back then, he said. She was supportive, sure. But honestly, I think some people are only meant to help you get to where you're going. You can't take everyone with you. The host laughed. That sounds cold. Jason shrugged. I'm not here to be soft. I'm here to be legendary. Lena stared at the screen until the footage faded into a shampoo commercial. Her fingers curled around her coffee cup. No tears. Just fire. She didn't respond. Didn't reach out. She simply kept going. Day by day. Case by case. Until the silence stopped hurting and became power. Until she realized she didn't need to be loud to be unforgettable. The Lena who once lived in someone else's dream was gone. Now, she was the one writing her own. And the world? It was about to meet her. The lobby of Wells and Reese smelled like expensive wood, ambition, and people who hadn't slept in days. Lena adjusted the strap of her worn laptop bag and stepped onto the marble floor with quiet certainty. Her heels didn't echo like they did in her old apartment hallway, but her confidence did. She had earned this. No favors. No shortcuts. No family names whispered behind closed doors. Just her. The first day was a blur of paperwork, case files, endless introductions. Her mentors spoke fast. The firm was fast. Everything was. But she was faster. She was good. Sharp. Focused. She didn't come here to belong. She came here to rise. On her fourth week, she was pulled aside by one of the senior partners, Mr. Blackstone, who handed her a folder with a raised brow. New client. High profile. Wants discreet counsel for a personal incident involving a hospital matter. You've handled medical documentation cases before, right? She nodded. Yes, sir. He requested you specifically. Lena froze. Me?
Yes.
By name. She blinked. But I don't. Must have seen your work in that viral tenant rights case. Whatever it is, impress him. He's influential. That afternoon, she walked into the private conference room and stopped cold. Ethan Callahan.
Tall.
Impossibly composed. A calm, clinical kind of handsome. He wore a dark button-up beneath a gray overcoat and carried a silence that was louder than words.
Her throat dried.
He stood and offered a polite smile. Lena. Her fingers didn't shake when she extended her hand. Dr. Callahan. He chuckled softly. You haven't called me that since we were 16. She froze again. That smile. That voice. The flash of memory. Summer bonfires. Quiet nights on the terrace. Her brother dragging Ethan into every family moment like he belonged. Because he did. Ethan Callahan wasn't just her new client. He was her brother's best friend. He was the boy who once gave her a sunflower after a debate meet. The one who looked at her like she was more than just the little sister. And though no one ever said it aloud, he was the one her family had quietly, unofficially approved of. He was, in every unspoken sense of the word, her fiancé before Jason ever existed. She sat down slowly, professionalism stitched tightly into every breath. You requested me, she said. I did. You could have hired anyone in the city. I know. She narrowed her eyes. Why me? He didn't hesitate. Because I wanted it to be you. The silence between them held more weight than the entire file sitting between them. He didn't elaborate.
She didn't ask again.
They dove into the case. A medical dispute involving a miscommunication with patient records. Straightforward. Containable. But nothing about this felt professional. Not when he already knew her handwriting. Not when he offered her tea without asking how she took it. Not when he remembered the way she rubbed her temple when she was overworked. Jason had never even asked what her favorite color was. After the first meeting, Lena called her brother Aiden. You gave him my name, didn't you? There was a pause. He asked if you were still in the city. I didn't lie.
Aiden.
I didn't push it, but he's always cared. I don't talk to the family much anymore, she whispered. I know, but not everyone turned their face.
She didn't respond.
Because the truth was, Jason never asked about any of it. Not about her family. Not about the tension that made Lena stop going home. Not about why she worked herself into exhaustion. He assumed she had no one.
Ethan?
Ethan knew. He'd always known. 2 weeks into the case, Lena confronted him. They were sitting across from each other in his hospital's private consultation lounge, her notes spread across a mahogany table. This could have been handled by 3 different firms. Why really me, Ethan? He looked up, his expression unreadable. Then softly, because I saw everything fall apart and didn't do anything about it. Lena's throat tightened. I knew you wouldn't ask for help, he continued. So, I made sure you couldn't refuse it. He wasn't just here for the case. He was here for her. She looked at him for a long time. And for the first time since Jason, she didn't feel watched, or judged, or studied. She felt seen, and that terrified her more than any courtroom ever could. He was reviewing a line in the legal brief, brows furrowed, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside her. She wasn't sure what part of him still made her heart ache. Maybe it was the way he read everything she handed him, fully, carefully, like her words mattered. Maybe it was the way he still sat slightly sideways, left shoulder forward, because she once told him it made him look less intimidating. Maybe it was just him, because once, long before Jason ever sang to her under street lamps, Ethan was her first love. He had been her brother Aiden's best friend. 3 years older, always calm, always thoughtful. He never spoke over her, never laughed when she said she wanted to be a lawyer, even when the rest of her family did. In a house full of CEOs and board meetings, where business degrees were expected like family heirlooms, Lena's announcement had been an earthquake. I want to study law, she said one summer dinner, the clink of silverware stopping in unison. Her father frowned. That's rash. Her mother sighed. You've never thought these things through, Lena. Even Aiden winced. Only Ethan stayed quiet, eyes locked on her across the table. Later that night, he found her on the garden swing, cheeks burning with humiliation. "They don't understand," she whispered. "I do," he said. And he did.
Completely. Quietly.
Without needing to convince her otherwise. She had loved him for that. But love wasn't enough, not in the Whitmore household. They expected legacy, strategy, image. Lena was none of those things. Not back then. She was headstrong,
Proud.
18 and angry, convinced her independence was a weapon that needed swinging.
So she left.
Packed her things, moved into a shoebox apartment downtown, and cut everyone off but Aiden. No safety net, no trust fund, no contact, just student loans, part-time jobs, and law books heavier than her body could carry. For years, she held onto that fire, that pride. I don't need anyone. I'll prove them wrong. And maybe she had. But sometimes at night, when the exhaustion cracked her armor, she remembered what Ethan once told her before she left. Not everyone gets to be rash, Lena. Not everyone survives it. Back then, she thought he was judging her. Now she knew he was just worried. She had been rash. She had made decisions with fire, not foresight. But she hadn't stopped. Even when it hurt. Even when it left her hollow. Because she had to see it through.
So she did.
Lena? His voice pulled her back. Ethan had stopped reading. Was watching her now. Sorry, she said, straightening. Zoned out. He tilted his head slightly. You okay? She nodded too quickly.
Yes.
Just tired. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push. He never did. As the session ended, she began packing up her notes. Thanks again, he said softly, for taking this case. I know you didn't have to. She paused, then looked up at him, hesitating. Why didn't you say anything back then? He didn't pretend not to understand. Because you needed space. And because I thought if I stayed close, I'd make it harder for you to leave. Lena swallowed. And now? He smiled faintly. Now I'm hoping you'll let me stay. She didn't answer. Not with words. But she didn't walk away either.
And that?
That was more than she'd given anyone in a long, long time. Healing didn't happen all at once. It was quiet, unobtrusive, like rain soaking into dry earth. Ethan didn't push. He simply showed up. A soft voice over weekly calls. A steady presence in late-night document reviews. A warm gaze that lingered just long enough to make Lena feel noticed, but never cornered. With him, there was no spotlight. No proving. No pretending. Just comfort. He started bringing her coffee before meetings. The exact way she liked it, 2 sugars, no cream, lit off because she hated the taste of plastic. He walked her to her car even when it wasn't necessary. He sent her articles about landmark cases she once mentioned in passing. He remembered things Jason had never bothered to ask. And Lena found herself softening. Not falling. Not yet. But trusting just a little. One evening, after their weekly review, Lena walked with Ethan down the quiet hospital hallway toward the staff exit. I don't know how you balance this, she said. Surgeries, patients, lawsuits. He smiled sideways. When you've been pretending not to love someone for nearly a decade, everything else feels easy. Lena stopped walking. He kept going for a few steps before he realized she wasn't beside him anymore. She stared at him, wide-eyed. Ethan turned slowly. Too much. Her voice was quiet. You've been in love with me that long? He nodded. Not ashamed. Not afraid. I thought I lost you when you left home. Then I knew I lost you when you picked Jason, but I never stopped watching out for you. Lena looked down. Her chest tightened. So many emotions tangled beneath her ribs: guilt, tenderness, confusion, and something warmer. That night, she didn't sleep. She kept replaying his words, the tone of his voice, the gentleness in his eyes. And she remembered something strange. Something she hadn't thought about in a long time. Ariel Black, the coworker Jason had cheated with. Lena had never understood how that woman ended up in Jason's orbit so conveniently. How Jason had bragged about collaborating with her only after Lena had started to question his priorities. And now, with Ethan's confession sitting fresh in her memory, the puzzle shifted. The next day, Lena walked into their meeting room earlier than usual. Ethan was already there. She dropped her bag on the table, crossed her arms, and stared at him. "You arranged it, didn't you?" He looked up, confused. "Arranged what?"
Her voice was calm.
Even. Deadly precise. "Ariel." Ethan stiffened. "I asked myself 100 times how Jason ended up with a famous coworker who just happened to fall into his lap just when I was growing distant. Just when I was about to leave." She watched his face.
He didn't deny it.
Lena blinked, then laughed. Laughed loud and sudden and breathless. He looked startled. "You're not angry?" "Oh, I am," she said, catching her breath. "But not for the reason you think." Ethan took a cautious step forward. "Then what?" She walked toward him, stopping only inches away. It worked. His breath caught. Lena's voice was low, raw. "That whole disaster with Ariel, it opened my eyes. It made me see who Jason really was. You didn't sabotage anything. You just removed the blindfold I refused to take off." Ethan searched her face. "You should hate me." She shook her head.
No.
"You saved me." He exhaled slowly. Relief flickered in his expression. "But," she whispered, stepping closer, "I still need to punish you." His eyes widened. "Punish me?" A playful glint lit her gaze. Her lips curved, and then she kissed him.
Soft. Slow.
Not hesitant. Not revenge. Just everything. It was years of what-ifs unraveling in one breathless moment. It was the end of silence, the surrender of old walls, the beginning. When they pulled apart, Ethan's hands were still gently cupping her waist, and Lena was smiling like someone who'd finally come home to herself. "So," he murmured, "was that the punishment?" She laughed. "Just the warning." Falling for Ethan was the easiest, most terrifying thing Lena had ever done. There were no declarations, no dramatic confessions, just quiet moments that slowly built a world between them. He'd wait outside her office with takeaway when she stayed too long. She'd text him case updates late at night, and he'd reply within minutes, even between surgeries. Sometimes, when they walked together in silence, his fingers would brush hers. And sometimes she let them stay there. It wasn't a relationship. Not yet. It was a reckoning. Because Lena knew how love could turn, how trust could rot, how someone could stand beside you one day, then throw you to the wolves the next. Jason had taught her that. He hadn't just broken her heart, he'd made her question her judgment, her instincts, herself. But Ethan was nothing like Jason. And still her mind whispered, what if? What if this time ended the same? What if she lost herself again? Then came the message that forced her to confront everything she thought she'd buried. "Aiden, come home. Just for one night. It's time." She hadn't been home in years. Not since the argument. Not since her father called her emotional, and her mother sighed like her choices were foolish detours. She'd kept her silence. Until now. Ethan offered to drive her. He didn't say much on the way, just held her hand when her breathing grew shallow. The Whitmore estate hadn't changed. White columns, gated entrance, a garden that looked more like a museum than a home. As they walked in, heads turned,
but not with judgment this time.
with something quieter, something like relief. Her mother stood first.
Tall.
Impeccable. Nervous in a way Lena had never seen before.
Lena, she said softly.
Mother. Her father rose slowly. You look strong. Lena raised a brow. That wasn't always a compliment coming from you. He gave a slight, crooked smile. It is now. They didn't rush forward. Didn't pretend the years hadn't passed. But they didn't turn their backs either. Aiden stepped between them all. We're not perfect, but we're still your family. And then her mother added, her voice more fragile than Lena had ever heard it. We kept up with you. Quietly. Every scholarship. Every article. Every case. We were proud. We just didn't know how to say it without making things worse.
Lena's chest tightened.
She hadn't expected that. She didn't cry, but something loosened inside her ribcage. Then came the surprise that nearly made her drop her glass at dinner. Her father cleared his throat. Ethan's already spoken to us. Lena looked up sharply. Spoken. Ethan glanced at her, mild, but not apologetic. About the future, her father added.
About you.
Lena blinked. Wait, what kind of future? Her mother smiled, real this time. The kind that doesn't need arranging. But if it happens, we'd be more than happy. Aiden grinned. We always thought he'd be the one. Lena turned toward Ethan, eyes wide. You told them? He met her gaze. I never stopped wanting it. I just waited for you to want it too. Her heart thudded. This wasn't a trap. It wasn't pressure. It was acceptance. Later that night, on the garden terrace where Ethan once handed her a sunflower when she was 16, she stood beside him again. I thought this place would haunt me, she said. He looked at her. Does it?
No.
Not anymore. She turned toward him, the wind brushing loose strands of hair from her face. I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I needed to believe I was more than what they told me I had to be. And you are, he said. She exhaled, shoulders finally relaxing. I was rash.
Proud.
I didn't see then that not everyone gets to burn bridges and still be welcomed home.
She paused.
And yet here I am. 3 days later, Jason showed up. He always had a sense for when he was losing something. He didn't text, didn't call, just walked into the law firm's front lobby as if he owned the place. Lena's assistant's voice buzzed in her earpiece. Jason Hale is here to see you. Lena's stomach twisted, but not from fear. From annoyance. She told herself she didn't have time. But curiosity was its own kind of poison. She walked out, heels crisp on tile. Jason turned. Still smug. Still wearing that fake humility like a polished trophy. You look different, he said. She didn't smile. She walked towards him. Slap. The sharp crack echoed through the glass-walled office like a gunshot. Now this situation. Jason's eyes narrowed. I made a mistake, he said. But I'm here now. That has to mean something. Lena smiled tightly. It does. It means I finally see how small your world is. Ethan waited outside. Not possessive. Not worried. Just there. Lena turned toward him. Jason followed her gaze, jaw tightening. He's nothing like me, Jason muttered. Exactly, Lena replied. That's the point. Lena didn't look back as she stepped out of the firm's glass doors. Jason's voice faded behind her like background noise from a place she no longer lived. Outside, Ethan stood by his car, waiting, as he always had, long before she ever knew what true loyalty looked like. She walked up to him slowly, her heels tapping in rhythm with the new life she'd built. He didn't ask what happened inside. He just looked at her, and she nodded softly. It's done, she said, and with that, the last tie to her past snapped, not with anger, not with fire, but with peace. 2 years later, the Whitmore estate no longer felt like a battlefield. It was filled with laughter now. Tiny footsteps pattering down the marble halls. Crayons on antique tables. Fingerprints on glass that no one scolded anymore. Lena Callahan, no longer Whitmore, no longer Hale, was sitting on the garden swing, a toddler asleep against her chest. Her daughter, Elise, stubborn and bright like her mother, was chasing butterflies in the tall grass, Ethan a few steps behind her, pretending not to keep up. Their son, little Julian, was curled into her like she was home itself. And she was. Her name now stood at the top of the city's most respected law firm. Lena Callahan, senior partner. She was feared in courtrooms, admired in headlines, and known as the lawyer who never lost, unless it cost her soul. She had it all, and more importantly, she had herself. Sometimes at night, when the world was asleep and the kids were tucked in with Ethan reading stories by their bedside, Lena would sit by the fire and remember, not with regret, but with recognition. Jason Hale had once been her whole world. Now he was nothing more than a flicker in the background, the echo of a girl who once didn't know her worth. She heard about him, occasionally, back in local bars, singing to drunk crowds. One viral video now turned into one-hit nostalgia. No interviews, no agents, no Ariel, just a man with a guitar and a voice that no longer stirred the world. He never married, never rebuilt, because without the person who carried him, he had nothing left to stand on. But Lena? Lena stood tall. She had risen from ashes he tried to bury her in. She was no longer the woman he thought would come crawling back. She didn't just walk away. She built a world he could never enter again. And as she leaned her head back, letting the breeze brush over her face, she smiled to herself, one hand wrapped around her sleeping son, the other resting on her growing legal brief. A husband who loved her.